The film critic Roger Ebert once said, "Sooner or later, everyone who loves movies comes to Ozu." It has taken me some time to get there myself, but hopefully by watching Late Spring and viewing this presentation, you too will arrive at an appreciation and love of his films. One of the things I noticed, and perhaps you will too, is that what is in this film is at times as important as what is not. Ozu's artistry partakes of a Zen aesthetic that permeates Japanese culture. For us it may seem strange, but what does not happen between actions, or what is off-screen, can be moving and frequently is. Fleeting scenes and cutaways to objects at first may seem inconsequential, but they resonate within us, creating a sense of timelessness. They present us with something peculiar to which we are unaccustomed, yet which we intuit as being of importance. What Ozu shows us leaves a deep impression. So let me tell you why I find Ozu so awe-inspiring as a filmmaker before discussing Late Spring. I would like you to appreciate not only this film, but his artistry in general. Film critics have called him many things. A minimalist, there are aspects of this in his films. Slow, he does linger, and there is no rush. Metaphysical, he is deeply concerned about the way we live in the world. And neorealistic, he makes films about the lives of ordinary people. But some have labeled him anti-cinematic, which I find peculiar for a man who made 54 films that were popular and critically acclaimed. So, right away, let's get to the roots of what might be his real evils, or what he does not do, what makes some film goers so very uncomfortable. Well, most movies we see lean into us. They try to grab us, hold us tight, to divert us, to entertain us. They are desperate for our attention. And in no uncertain terms, they do things explicitly to let us know how we should feel about what we see. Nearly all of them use familiar filmmaking techniques, tools of the trade, some of which are subjective shots, over-the-shoulder shots, reaction shots, shots that are in the side of line, shots of varying sizes, close-ups to long shots, as well as an array of things that exhaust the camera's capability for movement and lighting and focus, and a load of editing tricks, pumped emotive music, narration, and the manipulation of time, flashing forwards and backwards. Well, as you might guess, Ozu employs very, very few of these techniques. For the most part, we are presented with full shots in which we are shown an environment into which people enter and exit. When he departs from this technique, it is for a very good reason. In Late Spring, you are not instructed or manipulated by editing or by any other cinematic trick. You are not grabbed into the drama. Ozu's films lean away from you and challenge you to lean forward. The camera gazes on the actors directly. They face you, which places you in the middle of the scene. You are invited to become an active, not a passive part of the film's journey. When the camera remains static, it allows you to construct your own film, to meditate, to discover by your own involvement, to choose what you want to see within a given frame. He does not freeze the narrative. Ozu trusts you. The dialogue in his films gives meaning to the silences, and the stillness allows for time and contemplation. Ozu lingers on images. They are held much longer than we expect. We become somewhat puzzled. We become aware of real time. We become involved in what some call the duration of experience. We are watching time. Ozu is intentionally meditative and does not cater to movement. Streets, buildings, alleys, trains, ordinary life and domestic activity, mountains, lakes, lapping waves, aesthetically placed objects, some stills containing action, some extrinsically symbolic. They are signposts which amplify meaning. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is left to chance. Ozu is unique in using nearly only 50mm lenses. That renders what is closest to human vision. And since Japanese in domestic situations so often sit, he originated what is called the tatami shot, where the camera is placed at a low height to simulate the eye level of a person sitting. Ozu was employed by one film studio his entire career. He started in the late 1920s making comedies, and in the 1930s moved to making gangster films, a popular genre in Japan. And since these films were so well liked and so enormously successful, he became the favorite of the studio and was given the liberty of developing his own film properties, which became, for the most part, contemporary family dramas. Some of these were based on novels, but nearly all of them involved his writing. Only once was Ozu required to film a traditional historical spectacle. In the 30s and early 40s, many of his films attained great critical acclaim, and Ozu repeatedly received prestigious awards. And like many other great film directors, he cultivated and collaborated with a small group of actors and actresses. Ozu chose to work with the same writer, architect, cinematographer, and set designer for nearly all of his post-war films. He was a very organized, disciplined, detailed-oriented man. He knew precisely what he wanted, and every detail of his films was pinned down in advance of shooting, thus allowing him to complete the films quickly and under budget. And this, in part, provided him with great latitude and independence as a filmmaker. Late Spring, in Japanese called Bashu, is Ozu's third post-war movie, and the first of a somewhat unrelated trilogy, the Noriko cycle, that have an unrelated character called Noriko in each film. The film starred a very popular Japanese actress with whom Ozu had never worked, and an actor who had appeared in nearly all of the director's films. The film portrays the close, loving relationship between Noriko, a single 27-year-old daughter, and her father, a 56-year-old professor. It is the story of how conservative values and the deemed need for marriage by others intrudes upon them with ensuing tragedy. Although the act of marriage is implied as necessary and a part of a natural life cycle, neither the father nor the daughter want it, and it is questionable whether either of them will benefit from it. The value of marriage itself is under inspection in this film. Noriko's stenographer friend has a disastrous, unarranged marriage, yet she urges Noriko to marry. And Noriko's own father, in defense of an arranged marriage, tells her, "Your mother wasn't happy at first. I found her weeping in the kitchen many times." It would seem that neither of these examples are convincing recommendations to marry. Yet, this hypocritical advice is repeatedly given to those closest to her, given by. Interestingly, we don't see spouses in this film, and their absence and the presentation of marriage in the abstract makes it all the more menacing. Yes, in general, children are made to break away from their parents. But is this always true? Throughout Ozu's career, his focus was on the intergenerational nature of families. And here, the generational rupture is melancholy. Marriage can be seen like the death of a character, one whose life and identity will become subsumed in marriage. Noriko recognizes this in facing the prospect of an arranged marriage. She understands that the split between her and her father will be irrevocable and that it presages his death. Noriko goes through stages. At first, she is angry, Then she is resistant. Then she is jealous. Then, during her final trip to Kyoto with her father, some of these emotions fade, and she lets herself feel an intense sadness with the sense of coming loss. In this scene, her father falls asleep, and he is unable to answer her imprecations. Then, at this very moment, we see a vase set before a screen on which are cast the shadows of swaying leaves. Why does Ozu show us this? Ozu then cuts back to Noriko and returns to the vase. Again, why does he show us this? And then he cuts back to Noriko. Is this a symbolically charged image? What is it meant to say? Why does it linger with us? Is it a coda? What can it be? And then there is a complementary and final image. Noriko's father is peeling an apple, an action which terminates with him holding a peeled apple, and then the image of the apple peel falling to the ground. This then is followed by the final shot of a shallow lapping wave in the incoming tide. Enough said. Be patient, allow yourself to enter into this film, and since all cannot be explained, appreciate its mystery. Thank you.